The NHL playoff picture is still up in the air, but here in Winnipeg, fans are confident the arena will echo with the sound of white noise again.
Free socks.
Let's go! Go, Jets, go! Winnipeg is back in the big leagues and over the moon.
Welcome back to the landing strip presented by From Financial. And we're here to talk about an interesting 2-1 victory over the New York Rangers in a game where I like how Choices puts this. Game had a bit of a playoff feel to it. Shen was noticeable, played physical, calm, and passed the puck well. We'll get into the later part of his quote later. Nice to see Danica made it. We're happy to have you. Good evening to Rob. Good evening to Curtis. What's going on, Rahul? Nice to see you here too. The crowd's starting to creep their way in as we talk some Jets hockey after that W over the New York Rangers. But I don't want to do this alone. This isn't a one-man show. Mikey, how you doing this evening?
Doing pretty good. That was another big win for the Winnipeg Jets. We talked earlier in the season how these Winnipeg Jets and New York Rangers games are starting to feel like playoff games, and this was another example of it, I think, tonight. So, a lot to talk about in this one. Real happy that we got the points, and real happy to be here with everybody in chat, and real happy to see you.
Hey, it's always nice to talk to you too, buddy. We've been doing well, and we apologize for Sunday. That was on me. I had some stuff going on, but we're here to keep it going. Let's kick it off. Let's start with just the basics. What were your big takeaways today before diving into some specifics?
Before we get into that, I think I have to answer pseudonym Humorosa with the Squirtle time. Let's hit it.
I know. I'm just ready to go, man. Immaculate vibes after a W here.
Can't pass up the Squirtle.
Never. It gets me in a good mood every time, man. I something about that song.
I walk around humming it afterwards for an hour after the show.
I play that little clip way too many times when I need a feel-good moment, I gotta say.
Always works.
But for the most part, gotta be feeling pretty good. This is a big W. We know the stakes after the deadline. We know Dallas is right on their heels. A big one coming Friday. Liked a lot of what I saw today. Didn't like a lot of what I saw today. What stands out to you, Mikey, on a night like tonight?
I'm going to beat a dead horse and jump straight to my boy Cole Perfetti. He has arrived, everybody. I've been trying to tell you all here, the Cole Perfetti emergence is upon us. We are getting to witness it. And game after game, he's building on those really positive performances. He's getting on the score sheet now as well, which is getting him noticed. But it's all the little things that he does and continues to do game in and game out. And man, I'm a big Cole Perfetti stan. I'm super happy with the way that his season's been rolling, and I think that's again he was all over the ice tonight, and that's what jumped out for me.
Yes, that felt like a game, and I had some DMs on Twitter from people watching as well. That felt like a game where you see the confidence in Cole Perfetti really starting to shine. I liked early in this one when Nick Ehlers drew that hook, and Zibanejad picks up the puck, and he takes a run at Mika Zibanejad, and Zibanejad didn't like that. So you see that side of the game, the Prick-Fetty side that a lot of people are excited about. And then he's got points on both goals with primary assists. On that first goal, I want to start by talking about Nick Ehlers, though, on this play. As someone that just absolutely adores watching Nick Ehlers play, that's the type of play that hasn't always produced points for him because of not playing with guys upper in the lineup. Now with this Perfetti emergence, you see how he creates space in transition for his line mates. Like that whole goal starts because Nick Ehlers decides to attack the middle of both defenders and slow up, which makes both defenders react and push up on Ehlers. He drops it for Perfetti. He pulls off a gorgeous dangle before sending it to Vlad, who barely sneaks it in, but it gets in. And then when Perfetti takes over Ehlers' spot after the JT Miller interference little whack, and then Ehlers takes a big whack on JT Miller back, who absolutely sold that. Like, you would have thought he got shot the way he was trying to draw a penalty on that one. But Cole Perfetti jumps out onto that power play 1 unit and just patient down low and finds Gabe Vilardi. And what about that goal? Like, it looks like Cole Perfetti tried to shoot that puck and he fans, but how quickly he adjusts on the fly to get it on his backhand and get it over to Gabe Vilardi in the slot for a wide open goal.
Wide open.
Just great what you're seeing from Cole Perfetti when he has the puck on his stick, when he's got that confidence going. He creates 2 goals on this one. Like I said, I really do think that first one, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When Nick Ehlers creates for his line mates, it forces 2 guys to pull to him, and it creates a 2-on-1 elsewhere. But yeah, I think the Cole Perfetti start and the Cole Perfetti game, this is what you're looking for from the Jets' number 1 player under 23. This is a big part of the Winnipeg Jets now and later.
Yeah, 100% agree. Actually, before I get to the goal, I want to answer a question that Rob Somerville asked in the chat, just because I did see the answer right before we came on. He was asking if anyone knew if Vilardi was injured during the game tonight. Scott Arniel was asked in the post-game chat, or in the post-game scrum, pardon me. And no, he was not injured. He's okay. They just wanted to give a different look at the end of the game with a couple of the guys. But Vilardi, he said, is not injured. Should be all right. So just that real quick.
I gotta say, and we'll get into that a little bit later, a well-deserved benching, if you ask me. But we'll get there in a bit.
We'll get to the top line.
We'll get there. But this was, I think, another great showing from that second line. In this game, I thought there was 2 lines that really stood out for me. The second line, for sure. Obviously, they contribute on the 1-5-on-5 goal. Cole Perfetti, a big part of that power play goal. But also the fourth line tonight. Really liked what I saw from the Winnipeg Jets' fourth line. Morgan Barron up the middle with Brandon Tanev and Alex Iafallo. Got a little tidbit from Mike McIntyre with the free press on Iafallo we'll get to as well tonight. But that was a line that just had that identity where they're just bulldogs every time they're out there. I just wish one of them had a little bit of touch in front of the net with what some of the chances they were creating from just getting in on that forecheck and just pressuring guys just from hard work. I mean, Brandon Tanev gets announced a welcome back, and it's probably the loudest ovation I've heard there in a bit. And you can see why he's a crowd favorite in a game like this. That motor's always going. That's no secret if you've watched Brandon Tanev. Hey, we'll open up the phone lines shortly here. But Brandon Tanev was buzzing. Love to see, as someone that loves to get in the goalie's crease, like to see Tanev answer the Rempe on Hellebuck by getting in Shetsy's skin a little bit. Even early in that first, Tanev created an opportunity for Iafallo net front and Morgan Barron. That line, if they could just sneak one in, I thought they had a really solid night in this one as well.
Yeah, it's hard work and nothing but. They just absolutely would not stop moving. The batteries would not turn off. And like you said, if somebody on that line had a little bit of offensive touch, something that they could pop in, they would explode. It's crazy the amount of chances and offensive zone time that they get. Barron's actually had an okay transition to filling into that center role while you've had Kapari and Gus kind of hung up on the shelf right now. So kind of kudos to Barron for being able to step into a more difficult position than what he's probably used to. And hopefully, I think we'd both probably rather see Gustafson in that spot with the current wingers. But shout out to Barron for stepping into that role at least for now and doing all right.
I think he really showed the flashes tonight that get people excited, right? He's a big body. He could skate. On the PK, he was very active and even had a couple opportunities the other way. It's just get one across the line. But I thought those two were kind of the two lines driving for the Jets at 5-on-5. 100%. I did think this was a slower night for the Lowry line. The first line we'll get into as the show goes on because I'm at the point where I might start throwing some missing signs on milk cartons with that group over this last stretch. But before we go down that alley, we also got some new looks on the back end. We got Luke Schen's debut and a brand new look on the third pair next to Hayden Fleury. Obviously, the big talk on social media, the big excitement was that Logan Stanley finally saw a healthy scratch. Before we dive into that, what did you think of Luke Schen's debut, and what did you think of him and Hayden Fleury together in Hayden Fleury's 300th NHL game?
Yeah, shout out to Hayden Fleury getting his 300th game. Dylan Samberg with his 200th game as well tonight. So a couple milestones for the Jets on the back end. Yeah, Schenn was the big ad for the back end, and then all of a sudden we get the word that Logan Stanley with a healthy scratch tonight. So that would be Fleury and Schenn taking the third pairing tonight. I was surprised. I'm not gonna lie. I was very shocked. Although again, right, considering the last game, you'd be hard pressed to not at least give him a break after the last game in there, right? So, that's they were an okay pairing tonight. They didn't have a lot of ice time, which was to be expected. They played even less than what that Stanley pairing normally plays at 5-on-5. Schenn is going to take some time to get up to speed with the group overall, but I was at least impressed with a few of the things that I saw, right? He brought the size that they were obviously looking for. He brought the physicality that they were looking for. Scott Arniel, I think, kind of put it best in the post-game show, or in the post-game scrum, that Schenn makes players take the long way around to get to the net. And you kind of notice that at certain times, right? That they kind of want to stay away from his side and his corner a little bit. So I think once he's more up to speed with the structure and the system overall, I think he's going to be a real nice depth piece for that top six there of D.
Yeah, I liked him tonight. You saw a lot of what makes Schenn a player that teams have traded for. You saw that big hit. Hurts Arthur Kaliev in the last 5 minutes of that game.
Rushed.
You saw a lot of the puck stopping. He's a guy through the neutral zone in the D zone that's going to get in the way of pucks. He turns it up the other way. You saw a little bit of the downside with the feet work. It's funny. My buddy Adam, I grew up playing hockey with for years, was watching the game, and he wanted to know my take on Luke Schenn, and I like how he described him. He said he reminds me of a dad playing beer league who can't really play up to speed anymore, but is strong and always makes the right play. I saw a lot to like from that pairing tonight. Shout out to Hayden Fleury, who not someone I've necessarily been convinced is the answer, but I thought tonight he played off of Luke Schenn really well. We saw him really using his wheels up the ice, and we know this team wants to push four guys up in transition. I thought Hayden Fleury did a real good job jumping into those plays. We also saw both of them take some PK shifts, which also gives you time to have guys like DeMello and Morrissey save those minutes 4 or 5-on-5. So I think that's part of the discrepancy compared to Stanley pairings is Luke Schenn still got up to 16 minutes. Just some of that came on that penalty kill rather than 5-on-5.
Yep.
And I think it does help lessen the load off those top guys, which you're going to need down the stretch, right? So I come into this one impressed with Brandon Tanev's game. I think Curtis Weave nails it. Tanev, sandpaper, Nik. It's infectious. And as a guy that used to play like that, I see the love for it. I see it. I get it. And he's just always buzzing. He gets the crowd going. Like I said, the ovation in there. And then I thought Luke Shen, it was just nice to see a third pair that didn't want to give me an aneurysm every 20 seconds they're on the ice. So I really like the early returns in the first game back at home from both of those guys.
Yep, totally agree. I wonder what we're going to see with answer Rob Somerville's questions if we see Shen auditioning with other partners before they decide ultimately who he ends up with. That's something I'm curious about too, to see if he does get looks with different partners, because yeah, if you give him a puck mover and he starts understanding a little bit more with the system, man, like I said, he fills out the end of the lineup real nicely for the Jets there. So I do think they may still give him a shot with some of the other guys a little bit to try to find the right fit, but it'll be interesting to see where he does ultimately shake out. Where do you think this goes with Shen?
Oh, I think he's going to be an everyday player for the Winnipeg Jets. We know Arneal's
just with which partner do you think, though?
Oh, I think we're going to see a rotation there. I think this is going to be a bit of a tryout down the stretch.
Yeah.
I think just based on today's game, Fleury's got to get the next game, right?
You would think, yeah.
We also saw Arneal giving Shen some shifts with the 44 with Josh Morrissey at times. D-Labs points out he saw Shen with Sandberg at the end too. So
He took
clearly there's
at least
an
one
early
shift
trust.
with each guy at minimum today. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're seeing a bit of a feeling out process, but I do think where this goes is depending on moments in games, maybe you see him elevated for certain situations. But I do think we might see a bit of a tryout here, and I think just based on the last two games, Hayden Fleury should maybe have the leg up based on the lefties. I wonder if we see Colin Miller at some point try the offhand there. Adam Douglas says, do you think Villy will get a couple games with Shen? I do think, and I think we're past the road on Villy this season.
Yeah.
I just think that if they would have given him the runway, he is the stylistic defender that would really fit what Shen does.
Yep.
Able to stretch the ice a bit, able to be that puck mover. But yeah, I really like the early returns of Luke Shen. And despite the lack of footwork, I thought he was really solid at getting in front of bodies, getting in front of pucks.
Yep.
And made sure to have a little conversation with Matt Rempe, which I don't mind to see as well.
I like that. And I even noticed, a couple decent first passes from Luke Shen tonight, too. Something that you really want to, the Jets need desperately sometimes. So if we can get, that little bit out of him while still getting all of those, positives that he comes advertised for, it'll be real nice. And yeah, the messed up thing is that stylistically, Billy Heinola would be the best option for him as a partner. But I don't think we're ready to get, I don't think we're ready to get Lucied with the football again and again and again, right? So it'll be interesting to see. You have to give Fleury, I think, the next game just based off of this one. But we'll see. Yeah.
We shall see indeed. I'm envisioning a bit of a 7-man rotation. I'm likely getting ahead of myself, and we'll see 64 shortly. But for me, that Carolina game should be it. For a team that's trying to chase a cup, for a team that's got to figure out their own things, it's time to pull the plug completely after that Carolina game.
It was pretty rough. Although it's hard to see them just giving up on him after that. I can honestly see I can hear Scott Arneal's voice saying, we just wanted to give him a night off, give him a chance to, catch his breath. Hayden hadn't played in a while. We want to make sure guys have warm legs getting ready for the playoff run. It's going to be a rotation. No one's going to play every game. And then he's going to come back in and play the next, 10 games straight. Is my guess. But hey, if we're going off of performance, I absolutely think they should be running Fleury Shen again, because it worked. It just worked tonight.
In Ehlers we trust. Vlad did a good job of handling Sawyer's intermission 2C trade deadline comment. Okay, I was in the barn tonight. What is this about? And then we'll dive into some of the other stuff.
Sorry, one sec. What's that?
In Ehlers we trust said Vlad did a good job of handling Sawyer's intermission 2C trade deadline comment. Did you catch that at all?
Oh, they asked him about the rumors about the Jets looking to upgrade at that position. And yeah, he handled it like any player does, right? It's we focus on the guys here. I can only play my game and try to produce. And, he handled it well. I think it was, maybe not what you want to ask him while the game's going on kind of thing, but he handled it well.
Vlad's a total pro, man.
100%.
Speaking of total pros, though, let's go here before we dive into some of the top line conversation and some of that other stuff. Total pro, Alex Iafallo making it known he wants to stay in Winnipeg. What do you think of that, and where do you think that goes?
Yeah, that was that one caught me by surprise a little bit that it was public like that. We got a reporting from Ken Weeb and then shared back out by Mike McIntyre that there's some talks going on about a possible contract extension for Alex Iafallo. I kind of like it depending on what the number is going to be. It's a guy that they really like. He's their current Swiss Army knife, right? He's their he's the current Mathieu Perreault. He's, you can put him on any of the lines when you need the help, but he'll hang out and play on that fourth line for the most of the time. Not a lot of scoring, right? But he's great with the puck. If they can get that number down to a reasonable AAV, he's their exact type of player. And we've seen that the Jets want to go to do this by committee, right? We're going to be doing all of this by committee. They need, all of these bodies, and he fits their system. He understands it. Yeah, if they can get him signed to a decent number for this playoff run going forward, these next few years, I think it's pretty good.
D-Lab says, I bet it's 3x3. Donnie Fester says, AI is so undervalued for the roles he fills. Turk Ferguson says, sweet, I like AI, just keep the term in dollars, right? I think AI is just such a reliable player. You could just trust him every time you throw out there. I thought this was a game where he stood out to me. Obviously, we talked about the fourth line, but on the penalty kill as well. There's a play when this game is 2-1. There's a play when this game was 2-1 where they tried that cross-seam pass, and I believe it was from Zabinjad to Miller, and he gets the stick on it late.
Yeah.
He came up with a few big blocks through the middle of the ice, and he's just so reliable. And we see him when they want to put Gabe on the bench at the end of the game. He's the one going out with that top line to try and defend. He's clearly a guy that's come from California and really embraced the outdoor life and hunting and fishing that Winnipeg has to offer. So I do see that value, especially for a guy that is respected around the league. Now, my one concern here is, and Gilbert Marion make sure to remind me of my own take on it. Gilbert says, I did say the same contract as Vlad. You weren't in favor, Nick. And I just want to say, I want to be careful with signing too many of the depth guys with where some of these contracts at the top of the lineup are going. But hey, if you can get a guy like Alex Iafallo on a reasonable deal, I see the value in it. I just hope it means if you're going to go that route, you can't give Mason Appleton the contract that's coming. That's where you start to get in some trouble. I'm a big AI guy. He's someone I trust. He's someone that coaches can trust and clearly fits a ton of roles within this team. If you can keep that contract reasonable, and it means that Mason's walking out the door and maybe a Chibrakov's filling in a bottom six next year, I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
Yeah, I like it.
I just worry about the number.
Yeah, they got to keep the number at a normal. Yeah. Honestly, I could see it being the Vlad contract.
And we're going to give Gilbert Marion a lot of props if he hit on that because he was on it early.
He called it. And, to echo Adam Douglas in the chat, they do need to make room for some young guys, but hopefully that'll be Appleton's spot and maybe also, unfortunately, Ehlers. But they should have those spots, and you can have Iafallo and Vlad, I think, signed to those numbers as long as, you don't sign Mason Appleton. You have that place open for a guy coming in on an ELC making, a lot lower, and try out some of the young guys and see what you have in those Moose players because you have to. You can't sign Mason Appleton if you're gonna do it with Iafallo, and I'd much rather Iafallo.
And Rahul is where my caution point is. Rahul says if Iafallo is signed and assume Ehlers, there's no room for Lambert or Chibrikov. So that's just where you start to look into the future a bit. But I am an AI guy, and I think Slick really nails it. Nice to see Slick in the chat at all hours of the night across the pond.
Shout out.
Can't hurt to have a guy who's been vocal about wanting to sign in Winnipeg. And just given a lot of the talk of late, obviously that does carry value in Winnipeg. And I do think he's a real solid player. So you could sell me on that situation. I just think it means some other things have to be tweaked as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. They still have to make sure they have that room. But like you said, with all of the talk that's gone on in the last week, right, about, nobody wants to sign in Winnipeg and, Woody waive his no trade clause and blah, blah, blah. It's nice to have a story out of this is a guy that wants to resign and wants to be in Winnipeg. He loves it here. They're a number one team, So, yeah.
No, it's definitely good vibes, and especially with the conversation. It's one of those things. The Winnipeg Jets continue to do very well, when they get guys into this city, making them feel appreciated, really having them feel at home and wanting to stay. Like, despite the narrative, and it's never going to change for players outside of the Peg, it's undeniable at this point that when guys come and play here, it is harder for them to leave than people make it out to be, unless they're one of those, like the PLD types. So I think the longer this has gone on, I think that's a real good reflection of the Winnipeg Jets at work.
How do you feel about Zooch 40's comment? Jen is Pionk's replacement for next year while Salmason acclimates.
I wouldn't hate it.
I would like that.
Wouldn't
I can get behind that.
Glizzy Water Soup shares a funny story about AI, and then we'll move on to some things. Glizzy Water Soup over on Twitch says, there's a really funny story about IFL I've heard from when he had a bunch of frozen blood from a deer he shot in the box of his truck. He parked his truck in the parkade of his building, and when the blood thawed, it was dripping out of the truck box. That's a guy that does, like, the things that Winnipeg has to offer really fit his personality type. So it's cool to see stories like that come just when there's been so much negative publicity.
Yeah, it's exactly what you want, right? You want the stories of the guys who are having the good time here, who like it. Like Rye Guy 990 says, Winnipeg to visit sucks, but to live it's pretty good, right? So once you're here for a while, you kind of find out the hidden gems, and you learn to love it.
In Ealers We Trust asks one more thing about Perfetti, and then we're going to move over to Matt Rothman brought up a take I want to dive into here. In Ealers We Trust says, I wonder how much Fett's weight gained. He looks like he's getting stronger on the juice. Now, we don't want to start talking about the juice. We just saw Aaron Ekblad get popped for the
Only
Nate
orange
Schmidt formula. But yeah, this is the thing, right? Cole Perfetti is a 22, 23-year-old dude that development's not always linear. So there's a lot of people ready to write him off last year. This is that progressive step where you're seeing that he is able to play a man's game at his size because of how he uses his body, how he thinks the game. And I do think we are starting to witness that breakout that me and you have both been waiting for.
Yep, absolutely. It's coming together. He's got the IQ, right? We've talked about it a lot. His hockey IQ is off the charts. He sees the game at such an incredibly advanced level. He was just waiting for his body to catch up to it, and now he finally is, right? He's not the fastest guy out on the ice or anything like that, but puck on his stick, especially in the offensive zone, he can give you some magic. And yeah, his body's finally catching up to his brain. Yeah,
and hey, it's great to watch. Tonight was a fun one for Confident Perfetti, but I gotta say, not so fun night for the top line, and something that's been more consistent of late. And I know I'm no stranger to pulling the panic alarm on that group. But let's go to Matt Rothman's comment, and we'll expand this conversation into the entire line. Matt Rothman over on YouTube says, I got to say that 81 has been pretty disappointing since the break. Today's game was probably the worst of the bunch. Do you think... Now, I remember we were talking about it, and we were hoping that a competitive guy like that would take the healthy scratch in the finals and really build off of it with some spit and vinegar and come back with a vengeance. Yep. And I'm starting to see the same thing Matt Rothman is here. Has your boy 81 lost the juice a little bit coming out of the Four Nations?
So he does look a little shook coming out of Four Nations, but I'm going to say it's not because of the benching. I think it's more so he saw what it's like playing outside of Winnipeg, on a Mark Scheifele line, outside of a system that is, honed really well to his style and his game. And I think maybe that messed with his head a little bit more than the benching itself. Because he's a guy that in the past where he's been benched for poor performance, for streaks of not going. And he's taken those benching. Jets? No, before coming to the Jets. Before coming to the Jets in college. In college. And even at the World Junior level nationally, right? When as a kid. So he's taken those type of things before and come back really pissed off and with a chip on his shoulder and in a positive way. And yeah, coming out of Four Nations, he just doesn't seem to really be in the zone. And I feel like it's, maybe not so much just the benching. It's maybe that I don't know. It was just the experience of getting out of the bubble here and not having it be as easy. Maybe is messing with his head a little bit.
Yeah, he definitely, for me, feels like he isn't at the level he was prior to that tournament. Now, I don't want to read too much into it, but he's really struggling right now with the puck. When he's trying to, get fancy, he's getting stopped up quite a bit. I thought this was his worst game since the break, and it was really frustrating for me actually with some of the plays he's making, because this is the Kyle Connor that's really bugged me in the past. Today was a really big example of that player for me, where along the walls and in the corners, he's shying away instead of being engaged. We saw, what was it, the second period, I believe, ends with, on the power play, he just, a soft turnover at the blue line that creates a 2-on-1 the other way, in a one-goal game. And there was just so much of that in his game today. Now, I don't even know if he was the worst player on his line tonight, and we'll get into Gabe in a second. But that line is just, and we're probably not going to see it, but that line is screaming for some kind of message sent, a little bump, a little change up. And it kind of bothered me, actually, in a one-goal game tonight, despite the win, despite how it ends, that a game where he is struggling so much and you can't really trust him with the puck, that he sees 3 shifts in the final four minutes and only Gabe kind of sees the bench. I think that's a spot in a one-goal game where you have like the fourth line rolling. You know that the Lowry line's typically used in that role. And with the second line kind of being the go-to line lately, it kind of bothered me. I thought that was this spot to kind of send that message, actually.
Yeah, it's weird that it was only Velarde that really ended up missing any time at the end of the game there. And it feels like Arniel wanted them to play through it rather than try to, send a message, tell them to take a seat and, watch. It feels like with that group specifically, he really wants them to try to play through these spaces of just not having any type of production, not having it work, and starting to really pull away from the system. And yeah, the fact that it was only Velarde was weird, and it prompted even the scrum to ask, "Hey, was he hurt? Why wasn't he out there? Is he injured?" No, he says no, he was fine. He's fine, just getting some other looks. So yeah,
and hey, I agree. I completely agree with Scott Arniel benching Gabe Velarde. I think this was the worst game I've watched him play live, actually. And you know how high I am on Gabe Velarde. This was a game where he just didn't have his feet going at all. Outside of like bouncing, obviously he gets the goal into that empty net created by Cole Perfetti.
Yeah.
But he just didn't seem to be engaged and involved in this game throughout it, especially at 5-on-5.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with Scott Arniel going to the bench there. I just think this was a great moment to kind of send the message to both guys, and we didn't see that.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going to be honest, at any point. He's talked about it, right? He wants them to play through it more than anything else. So I hope they can, because yeah, they tend to go dark for long stretches. But as Donnie Fester points out on the Twitch chat, KFC specifically is super streaky when it comes to the goals. So he'll dry up right now for a bit, and hopefully that gets hot as we hit the playoffs.
Some takes in the chat. Zooch40 says Connor looks like a guy done with the regular season. Choices TK on the benching of Velarde versus the Connor conversation we're currently having says coaches always bench the guy with the thickest skin. And I do think point. There's something to that.
Very good point.
What's kind of disappointing to me about a game like this for the top line is that we know against really strong defensive teams that those teams disappear for them. This was the type of game where I felt, look how many breakaways the Jets generate just by getting to the middle of the ice versus the Rangers. I mean, we saw, 6-7 breakaways, and that's what's so weird about this game. I felt it was a really sloppy game with the puck movement, yet because of how loose the Rangers were in the center of the ice, the Jets, when they were able to connect passes, created great opportunities. I mean, there was one streak there. I know I was talking to Donnie Fester at second intermission where the Jets got 3 breakaways in a row and they all tried to go 5-hole on Chesty. But this is the type of game where I feel like the top line should take advantage of that game where it's a bit sloppy and they could jump onto that. We've talked at length that line can take advantage of when you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And it just wasn't there, and that was concerning to me. I think their problem tonight was different than the Carolina problem, where I think Carolina is a great example of where that line concerns me, is when you have a tight checking team, a team that's just hard on every puck, a team that forechecks well, that line does tend to disappear, and that's where my concern is in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Today felt like a totally different thing, where 2 out of the 3, I thought Scheifele was there at times, not there at times. I felt his best shifts came on those penalty kills when he replaced Connor down in a third period, which was really good to see that Arniel made that adjustment.
Yep.
As far as a PK in a 2-1 game, because I did think Scheif was trying to make things happen, but it felt like both wingers just had their heads in the clouds early on in this one.
Yeah, totally agree. And if not for Shesterkin, Scheifele probably has a goal, minimum in this one as well. So it's that changes the look of things maybe a little bit at that point too, because he had quite a few opportunities where Igor just absolutely shut the door. So but like you said, the wingers just didn't look like they were there today. And for the Rangers itself, like you said, they just kind of seemed really loose and giving the Jets way too many of those breakout opportunities. And our friend Harrison, HL Living Loco, points out that New York without Fox is just not the same team.
Which is true too.
Yeah.
In Ehlers We Trust on this conversation says they need a bump or a changeup, but who comes up? In my ideal world, it's the guy you trust, buddy. I think today was another example that Nick Ehlers, outside of the Cole Perfetti breakout night tonight, I thought Nick Ehlers was the best forward on the ice.
Yep.
He was in creative mode early. We talked about how he created that space on that first goal. There was a play shortly after where just a really creative redirection along the half wall that ends up on Fleury's stick, where Fleury actually had the lane to the net. I was kind of surprised he didn't take it. He kind of skated himself out of trouble, whereas you want to see him take that middle and get a shot. This was one where Nick Ehlers was all over on the back check. That guy was engaged, got engaged with JT Miller. If I'm looking for a bump up, I still firmly believe the best Winnipeg Jets first line involves Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, and Gabe Vilardi. If you don't want to touch that second line right now, which is your most consistent, and I would understand that as well, I wouldn't mind seeing like a Nino and Vilardi swap for a little bit here.
I was just going to suggest that if you don't want to break up the chemistry of that second line at the moment, because they're playing really well together. That first goal specifically, you got to see what all three of those guys do well individually put together on that goal, right? You had Ehlers absolutely just dogging them and pulling two guys in to create the opportunity. Perfetti's ridiculous pass, and then Vlad just bouncing and, plowing his way through to go get the goal. So yeah, if you don't want to touch that, it's a real easy swap to maybe try out Nino up top there. But I'm with you. I don't know how we get into Scott Arniel's ear to have Nikolai Ehlers play. Just give us a couple games. Give us a couple games on that line to see what it looks like. Full games, you know what I mean? 2 full games, I'm begging you. Because I feel like you would get a real nice look and then a chance to kind of play with the lineup from there. But yeah, it's frustrating that it looks like you could have something there that you can make an easy tweak in-house and get some good results, but hard to see it happening this late in the season.
Hey, maybe they'll finally start. If they're playing around on D, maybe we'll see some things. But yeah, they've been pretty committed to that group. Yeah. I see Isha Boy Bruce says, I see Raid. Nice to see the people coming over from the Illegal Curve show. Appreciate you being here to talk Winnipeg Jets hockey.
Welcome.
I see Phyllis has jumped in. Nice to see you, Phyllis. And Frosty invited her to chat. Before we kind of step forward into this,
I just want to say over on Facebook, we got some chatters as well. They want to shout out to say hey to Miranda, to Eric, and to Santino. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for being here over on Facebook, too. But let's open up those phone lines. Someone wanted to call in early. If you want to call in and chat and get some takes off on this game, we'd love to hear from you. I'll keep rambling on with Mikey if there is none of that as well. But Julian puts it this is where I really think this comes into the conversation as well. Julian on YouTube says, at the very least, they should try Ehlers back on the top line to see how the line works. Need to try it now so that players aren't caught off guard if it needs to be done in the playoffs. And that is where my concern with sticking with this group through the struggles and looking at the broader picture of what it's looked like at 5-on-5 from a goal production aspect over the course of the year. And that is one of those things where I don't want it to bite the Jets in the ass should they stumble out of the gate in the playoff and they're kind of chasing for something that they haven't tried this year. And I think there's value in that. Especially, this will be even more important, I think, if you were to get that win against Dallas on Friday, which is the big one this week. I do think that puts you at a reasonable gap, right? I think for Dallas to really make this push in the last 20, especially now without we know Heiskanen's out, but now Rupe Hintz took a puck to the face and is supposed to be out for a week, so you might be missing him on Friday. For Dallas to make this comeback in the way the point system works in the NHL, they're really going to need to take both those games from Winnipeg, I feel like, given the limited runway. So if you can get one of those games and keep this moving forward while trying to see what else you got here, I think there's value in that.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think that the space between now and the end of the season would be a great spot to start trying those things out so that you're not coming at it blind when the playoffs happen. And if, heaven forbid, between injuries or whatever, you have to go to it. My only concern is that we've seen for 66 odd games up to this point that's not the approach that this coaching staff seems to want to take. They seem a little bit more on the side of, these are our guys in these specific roles in these specific spots, and we want to work through those issues on the ice more so than, shaking up the lines and going to the blender. He's even given us the specific reasons why he's tried out certain things in the past, and it's only ever been for part of a period, one period at most, right? So I agree with the chat. I agree with you. I would like to see it. I'm having a hard time seeing this coaching staff start to experiment this late into the season. I feel like they're going to be wanting them to work it out, going forward. But man, what I would give to see them try it out for a bit here.
Donnie Fester throws out one we haven't talked about, actually. Let's go to the phone lines, and I'll go back to Donnie Fester's pointer.
Hey, caller, thanks for holding. You're on the landing strip. What's your name?
Riley.
Right on, Riley. Go ahead.
I do think the second line was struggling for the better part of the past few weeks or months. I don't know, Four Nations break through me for a loop, but eventually they did start to get going. And I do think we should hold the first line to a high standard because they're your first line, right? And it is concerning they're not going, but eventually they will, right? And as we've said, Connor is a very streaky player, but I do think they will get going, and I would like to see it if they do clinch first in the West, that whole thing, you do flip the lines around and just see what you have. I don't care if you have to flip, I have follow with Scheifele and Velarde, or I have follow and Scheifele and Nino, right? Just get players familiar with each other. What do you have to lose at that point? But they will get going. I'm not concerned with it yet. The next few games, right, I might get some more concern with, but I don't know. That's just my take.
Hey, Riley, I appreciate your take. Let's talk about it. I think my concern really is the fact they've played 60-plus games together, but if you break down to how they perform relative, it really is like a mid-pack first line. So even with a slow stretch like this, I don't expect that consistency in the playoffs. And my one concern is they are scoring a lot of goals when they're hot. But what if they're not in the playoffs and they don't have 300 extra minutes of runway to outscore the opposition like they have right now? And we've talked about that combo. So that's just my one thing here is when you get to the playoffs and the margin for error is so much smaller, it's such a big bet to me for a group that if there's certain matchups they face, if they finish first, I like the top line against what we're going to get in the 8th seed. But if Dallas ends up catching them, I don't like the top line against a Colorado. It's kind of where I'm at. And that's where I struggle to get my mind around the idea that, yeah, they're going to score at some point. They're going to go for a streak and it's going to be great. I just wonder about them stylistically and the consistency come playoffs and what that kind of means and how it's going to mean that the bottom nine, like a night like tonight for the most part, is going to have to carry them through. That's where I get concerned.
Oh, and I absolutely agree with you 100%. It's why you got to hope they get going before, right? And if they don't win the West, they're cooked anyways. It's a fact. This team's ceiling and peak is winning around, and that's gonna be it, right? But that's just how they're at, where they're at. The top line should get going, and they need to. It's not can be stated enough. And I do agree with you. 27 needs to get bumped, but they're not going to change it. This org and coach is stubborn as hell. It's just frustrating.
Hey, he's gonna come second place in the Jack Adams too, and that's nothing to sneeze at. I just think that once we get to where the games are meaningful, I think it is putting them at a margin of error that I don't feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. Anyways, I'm going to dip. Have a good night.
Awesome. Thanks,
Hey,
Riley.
thanks for the call, Riley. And we get two different things that people are looking for here, but Specterling, I think, nails a part of this too. And is this conversation the lack of faith in 27, which is why I do not see him re-signing? And I think that's something we talked a couple of shows ago. You had that stat about how he's pacing an NHL historical record for points in minimal ice time. And it's just like, right now, he looks like at his peak for me. I think these last couple of weeks we've seen Nick Ehlers really come out of himself. I just think that's a spot where you can get a bump and be better for it.
Yeah, we have a healthy, rested, and just dominant Nick Ehlers at the moment, who is on pace at the moment to score more points at a point per game rate with the least amount of ice time. It's incredible. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous what he's doing with little. You know, so if you give him a little bit more space to work, I think it's good.
Let's go back to the phone.
Hey, caller, what's your name? What would you like to talk about?
Hey, it's Maroon Pants here. Just kidding. It's Raul. How's it going, guys?
What's going on, Rahul? Nice to hear from you, buddy.
Hey, just a couple things on the conversation today. You guys mentioned I follow. Like, to me, at some point, like, the Jets are going to get into essentially where they were with Heinola a few years ago, right? Like, if Heinola wasn't making the team when the defense group stunk, and then they add Dylan and Schmidt, you know, and the next 3 years he doesn't make the team, right? So, like, the forward that'll happen with the forward prospects too. Like, if you think I follow signs and Ehlers signs, right, then what? You have like Lambert, Chibrikov vying or competing for fourth line roles with Barron and Kapari and Gus. Like, I haven't checked the cap Puckpedia or whatever, but everyone's still under contract, right? So I think eventually you got to cut ties with some of these, you know, I don't want to say replaceable, but they are kind of replaceable players, and get some youth in. If they want to go that route, otherwise it's like you got to start looking at trading them. Otherwise, the part of asset management is capitalizing when their value is still relatively high, but you're not using them. So yeah, like don't get me wrong, it's great that IFL wants to stay. The fact that Brendan Dillon really wanted to stay, that's great on the organization. The fact Nino resigns, Nemestikov, DeMello, like, this is all good things. But I think at some point you got to, like, kind of look at the future too, right? And to me, IFL is not, he's a good player, but I think you can start integrating some youth kind of let's call him a third line level player at the third line to start, because your top six is I think it's pretty much set, right? Like, Connor Scheifele, Velarde are signed. Perfetti's an RFA. I'm assuming Ehlers re-signs, and then if Nemestikov is 2C. So, yeah. And then just on the trade deadline, I'm kind of happy the Jets kept their first-round pick. I did want them to trade for a middle six forward. However, like, the market stunk this year. And I think they can get better value out of trading their first round pick for a potential, you know, second line, top six, surefire, second line center in the off season rather than at the trade deadline. And, you know, that's when teams are more looking to reshape their rosters and whatnot. So yeah, I'm okay with the Jets keeping their first. Like, I didn't love the value on the Tanev deal. I thought Shen was actually a solid pickup. He's had good defensive seasons in the past. I agree with whoever said Heinola would have been a optimal partner for him. Like, Shen has played well with guys like Quinn Hughes and Roman Yossi. So, you know, maybe he spells some time with Morrissey and you could run Heinola DeMello, for example. Like, you know, these are just options, but But yeah, other than that, love the show, guys. And thanks for taking my call tonight. Bye.
Hey, Rahul, always love to hear from you, buddy. And you see the asset management side a lot similar to I do. I hear you loud and clear on that. And that's kind of why I was taking the you can only sign one of the three kind of angle earlier on. And I do think you're right. Like the fact that Brendan Dillon wanted to be here, the fact Alex IFL, like those are notable things. And that travels around the league, right? Yep. The hockey circles are small, but you do have to be cognizant. And I think you're right there. Julian kind of points out this is why it makes no sense to not move off prospects. And Choices TK kind of points out now apply this thinking the Pion can make the right call. We'll get into those a lot more in the summer as we get through the season here. But you're right along the same lines I'm thinking here.
I do also like the idea of maybe trying to target either draft day or leading up to draft day, shopping that first round pick for a player, around that space to see if you can try to steal something there. I hadn't considered that. That's not a bad idea. Because we've talked about this first round not being that deep of a draft. So if you can find something that's a little more of a sure thing right away, not the worst idea.
I got some bad news for Frosty Winnipeg. He says Apple will give a hometown deal, and apparently Mason Appleton's creeping my tweets and sending them to his agent, suggesting he should get the Jordan Greenway money. So I'm not sure that the hometown deal will be there. Donnie Fester makes a point here. I'm going to read it. It's a bit lengthy, and then I'm going to go to one of his other points as well. Donnie says, guys, coaching at this level at this point in the season is not about experimenting. The coaching staff is focused on getting the group to peak at the time it matters most. And Donnie is 100% correct on this. Yep. You want to build up into the playoffs. You want to figure out what you really have. Why I approach this conversation in this way is because I don't think the Jets' current top nine is the peak of the Winnipeg Jets to get them through a playoffs. So Donnie had thrown out the idea of, would you try Scheifele between Ehlers and Perfetti and kind of just swap centers to see a bit of a mix and a bit of a shot. And the other thing is, like, if you tried something, it doesn't have to be permanent, right? It could be a 5-game stretch and maybe you don't like what you see. I'm still not a buyer on the idea that this version of the top nine is Winnipeg at its peak. And that's where I have the holdup.
Yep. I agree. Because in the limited looks that we've had where they've had to experiment because of injury and things like that, we've had really good results both on the ice that you can watch with your eyes and both in these, on the stat sheets. So it's a little bit frustrating, but I'm kind of with Donnie on this one. I don't see them experimenting at this point in the season. They're going to want their guys to play through the roles that they've penciled them in or penned them in right from, the jump. So it's, as much as I think we would like to see it, and maybe it's tempting to consider, hey, if they lock up first in the West and it's, they've got a bunch of games left over and they don't mean anything. But I don't know, man. I don't see it being approached that way. I think this is the group and they're going to hit it with that top line and that top six.
Glizzy Water Soup says, LOL, the fact Apples looks at Jets Twitter is hilarious. I got to say, it had to be the first time he saw my name beside his name and actually appreciated what he said. So that guy's got some thick skin. I got to give it to Mason Appleton for not just blocking my ass for how I talk about him sometimes. Sign of a guy,
Absolutely. And Appleton's from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So his hometown discount will be somewhere in the States. So he can take it there, no problem. Hope he gets the bag. We'll cheer him on. I'll buy a jersey when he leaves. It'll be great.
Case, back to the game, though. I got a question for you.
Yep.
Because they didn't show the replay in-house. What did we think of the goalie interference goal back after Dylan DeMello jumps into the slot and rips one top sheds on Igor Shesterkin? What did it look like from you? Because I wasn't getting much angles in arena here.
It was goalie interference. He gets into the crease willingly and the skates tangle up. It's not much, but the right skate does tangle up on the replay. It shows it pretty clear. They even asked Scott Arniel in the post-game scrum about it, and he agreed. He said we would have called that one back too for us. So, yeah, it was definitely goalie interference once he saw the replay. It was soft. Like, it wasn't a lot there. It was very, very light. But the right skate does make enough contact, and he gets into the blue paint on his own. So, yeah, goalie interference.
Because, the one we saw in-house was a really tough angle to get a grasp of it, and they showed it afterwards. And the angle we got to see, it looked like the defender and Barron, who, hey, shout out to Morgan Barron again. He's getting to the net. He's creating havoc in the net front. That's what you want to see from him. But the angle we saw, it really looked like he was battling with the D, and that the contact didn't come on the goalie. So I'm glad you got to clear that up, because just from what we saw in arena, it was a real tough one to see, and it's probably exactly why you heard the arena respond the way it did.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, the chat seems to mostly agree as well. Correct call. Stupid and I hate it, but correct call. Yep, correct call. So yeah.
Gilbert Marion said skate on skate. So
yep.
It was just one of those tough ones we didn't get to really see in-house properly. But it's what you want to see from a guy like Morgan Barron. If he's going to stay in this lineup, you want him creating havoc in the net front. Again, I thought this was a nice game for him.
Hey, caller, thanks for holding. You're on the landing strip. What's your name and what would you like to talk about?
Eric, and I'm going to talk about the top line struggles and just a couple points I've encountered in my life on the snake-bitten line or whatever.
Right on.
Okay, let's hear it.
So I've played and coached a lot of hockey most of my life. And whenever I was in a slump, I always liked the stability of having the guys I played with the most with me. But I also understand now that I've been coaching for a number of years that, like, you got to put a time clock on it too, right? Like it's game, 5, 6 since the break now, and you're still kind of not fully going. What our coach used to do, which I really liked, is he would just, for the start of each period, he would just flip the lines for 2 shifts kind of thing. Just give you that fresh eyes on something that would maybe get you, oh, here we go, that's where I should be kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I really like that takeaway. So with that in mind and your experience here, how do you feel about the top line and what you're seeing?
It's one of those things where it tugs on the heartstrings a little bit, because I know how good they can be, but I also know how not good they can be in those moments where sometimes it's like you mentioned earlier, like you want KC to just like muck it up in that corner, and like maybe winning that puck battle gets a jump on them and you get a 3-on-2 going back, and even just a good shot can just like kind of get the ball rolling, right? Like those little things make such a big difference in the grand scheme of things.
100%.
And it's those little things. It's like, I think that's why people are excited about it. And they're not even close to similar players, but a guy like Brandon Tanev and Luke Shen today do those little things, and it helps them push the pace the right way, right? Totally
exactly
players,
right.
of
like,
course,
and
but
I mean, I think he was in one of the most recent episodes of Shoresy. He said you're going to be the hardest working one out there, and that's what you'll do. And that's how guys have carved careers, right? By just being the hardest person to play against, even if it's just winning puck battles, forechecking, blocking shots. Like the Brandon Tanev was one of those guys that I always loved, because he's never afraid to jump in front of a lane. And as a lifelong defenseman, it's so annoying to play against those guys, because you're like, he's on the ice. I got to think about what I'm doing here.
Yeah. He's just that motor's always going. He's always pressuring something, and that does impact, especially defensemen, right? You want to get rid of that puck and don't have him run you over. So I totally see that.
Or worse, he blocks it and it goes the other way, because that happened to me 200 times in my career.
I was the guy blocking those shots and then absolutely not converting at the other end. So I had a different struggle in my game.
That's all good.
All right, man. Thanks for the call tonight. Appreciate your insight. Look forward to hearing from more. I like that those takeaways.
Yeah, no problem. I'm doing my best to tune in every night here, but it's past my bedtime, so I'm heading off.
All right. You have a great sleep. Thanks for being here, bud.
Yeah, night, boys.
Drew Cosmos adds to the conversation around Velarde. Velarde scored a goal and then he got benched at the end of the game. He has thick skin and pretends to be irritated in order to light a fire under KFC and 55. It's an Arneal 4-dimensional chess move. And I'm totally buying what Drew and Choices both said as well. Choices went there as well with the idea of it being a thick skin move and being a kind of a message to the whole group. Now let's see where they respond. Dallas is the big one. And right now, you look at their decor without Miro Heiskanen, it's full of a bunch of guys that I feel like that top line should take advantage of. They should struggle to move the puck outside Thomas Harley on Friday.
Yep.
And hey, I'd love for this entire conversation to become moot as of Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can put that one out of reach, that'll go such a long way outside of the Jets absolutely collapsing, down the stretch.
Absolutely. Slick McGuire, love it. Letting the caller know what's a bedtime as he's up at like 4 or 5 in the morning with us. We appreciate you, Slick. I'm looking forward to you coming down and getting to experience Winnipeg Jets hockey. Booked his trip this week, so it's official. Slick's coming down. He's going to be at game 1 at the Whiteout, and then he's looking at getting to the Whiteout party. So if you're in the chat and you want to link up with Slick, he's going to be flying over the pond for the Winnipeg Jets playoffs.
See, we got that international love going, everybody.
Yeah, and Glizzy Water Soup kind of gets to my point about Dallas's current decor. Dallas's right side is worse than ours. CC's currently on their second pairing. If the Winnipeg Jets top line wants to stop the noise, they're going to be playing against a decor that's going to cough up some pucks for them to do so. So I'm excited to see where that goes in a big game Friday night at Canada Life Center. It's only Tuesday, and I'm already excited to head to the rink for that one.
Yeah, that's a big game and a big night that has every opportunity for that top line to go ham on it. So it'll be interesting to see if they can capitalize because, yeah, everything's lining up perfectly for them to go out and just ball.
I do like the caller's point, too, on the having a clock as a coach. We know Arneal does want this to see it through and see where it goes. But getting to the 5, 6, 7 game mark, I'm a little leery is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to see it, but I'm gonna say they work through it. I'm gonna say they're gonna keep having them go out there with that group. I don't see them breaking them up outside of injury.
Outside of that, anything else that you think we might have missed tonight, or should we head into the 3 stars? I do got one announcement for the show for everyone here. There's going to be a new segment coming Friday, and we're really excited about it. We're going to get you guys thinking, and I'm excited. Given the depth of the thoughts that come from our chat, I'm excited to see how this goes. We're going to announce it then, but I want you to start looking at the game and picking out which aspects of the game, whether special teams, neutral zones, transition, any of the details within the game. And I want you to come into this chat ready to pick out what stood out to you the most. And I'll say this, on the first night of it, to the participants of this new segment coming Friday, why not give away another set of Jets tickets for the coming weeks? Let's see what game it is. I haven't looked ahead yet. I'm not, but we'll give away a set of tickets in the next 2 weeks on Friday. I'll announce that game on Friday, but be ready. You're gonna have a chance to go see the number 1 placed Winnipeg Jets just for being a part of our show, man. Sounds like something you should want to do.
Right? So tell your friends or, get everybody in here and come ready with what you saw in the game as the big thing that changed it for you. What was what stood out to you? And somebody's going to win some Jets tickets. Pretty cool.
Drew Cosmos goes, how about the puck to the face to top center hints? Is he going to show for Dallas? They said a week. Now, maybe they rush him in. They've somehow gotten the schedule where they have 4 days off before the Jets game on Friday. So maybe they really amp up the meds to get him back on Friday, but that would be a big blow. If the Dallas Stars don't have Heiskanen and Hintz, that feels like the game of the 2 to take from them and really build up this cushion.
Yeah, unless there is a doctor who is screaming at him not to play, I'm guaranteeing he's going to want to be out there. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get medically cleared.
So why don't we go to the 3 stars tonight?
Right on, let's hit it.
All right, before we dive in, let's see the 3 stars from the chat. Who were your 3 stars tonight? Mikey, I'll let you kick this off.
Right on. So for the 3rd star, I'm going to give it to a guy who I've forgotten about, I think, lately, just because, one, he's so good pretty much every single night that we've come to just expect him to be good. But I've noticed that I have not given him a star in quite a while. So Connor Hellebuck's got to get some love from me tonight. He had another good game out there. He was keeping them in it, early with some interesting saves. So yeah, Connor Hellebuck, 3rd star, because without him, man, this thing just doesn't work.
You know what save I really enjoyed? It was right down on my end, and it doesn't look as sexy because of how well he reads it and slides over. There's a play in the 2nd period, I believe it was, where the Rangers go from the corner D, back post to Mika Zibanejad, who got all of it, and it looked like a nothing save for Connor Hellebuck. This is a guy, In 20 out of his 50 games this year, 1 goal or against or less. I better see him on that Hart finalist ballot.
That is nasty work. We've been calling for it since the first week in, saying that the way he's playing, Connor Hellebuck should start to be talked about in the Hart. And man, here we are, game 67 coming up, and that's where we are. His name better be on that short list. So Connor Hellebuck, 3rd star today for me. Number 2, we talked about him quite a bit, Nik Ehlers. Man, it was just such an incredible game from Nik Ehlers, who continues to go out and do so much more with so much less than anybody else. The Jets are going to sorely miss him if he ends up testing the free agent market, because he adds such a dynamic to that second line. And, we talk about him wanting to be the one to go up on that first line because he changes it entirely. So yeah, another great game tonight. He's healthy. He's rested. He looks so fucking good. And you know who my number 1 star is. I shouldn't even have to say it. It's Cole Perfetti. Come on. It's here. I'm telling you, the breakout is here. This is the time. I told you guys he's going to be the future of the team. I got a couple people who laughed at me for it. I'm telling you, man, Cole Perfetti, this is the guy. 23 years old. It's only going to get better. Number 1 star, baby.
I like it, Mikey. I like it. Looking in the chat, in Ehlers We Trust wants Vlad to have all 3 stars. Thought this was a good night for Vlad.
Yes.
Gilbert Marion says Perfetti, Vlad, and Barron. Frosty, I like that point too. He liked Keandre. I don't know why there was rumors of him potentially being traded out of New York Rangers. I'm a Keandre Miller guy too myself. Frosty, yeah. I like that. I like that point looking at the other team here.
Good call.
Honestly, love to watch JT Miller throw a hissy fit. Anytime I get to see that guy look miserable, I enjoy it. So there's that. And Matt Rempe pulled the Nick Lynham special, actually, on that goalie interference. Barron definitely bumps him, but watching that play, he definitely gives that. He leans into that one. That used to be my favorite move as a forward. I love to get into that crease in that way. So as soon as I saw it, I'm like, yeah, I've seen that one before. Our caller as a D-man would have been giving me the gears back in the day, that's for sure. But let's go to my stars here. I think the top 2 are easy because I agree with you, but let's go a little bit off the board. I'm going to go an honorable mention to Vlad because I don't want him to be missed in this. I thought this was a really great night for Vlad and the second line, and he's answering those questions early from the trade deadline on whether he could handle that center role. Really, really enjoyed his game tonight, though it made me nervous if he missed that goal, the way it was bouncing around, but it sneaks its way in. 3rd star tonight for me. I'm going to go with my new favorite beer league dad style hockey player, Luke Schenn, bringing a calmness to the 3rd pairing we haven't seen. Now, part of that was without Logan Stanley in the lineup, but bringing that physical element to the decor, calming plays down, being a puck stopper, something this team could use. And kind of like what I said on the trade deadline stream, I think there's real utility to a guy like Luke Schenn. I would just like a puck mover beside him. I thought he had a really, really strong debut in Winnipeg, both on the PK and at 5-on-5. Luke Schenn's going to get my 3rd one in this game.
That's a good one.
I'm going to also give the 2nd star to Nik Ehlers. He was just buzzing out there at both ends of the ice. Creating things offensively that we know only Nik Ehlers can do. Like I said, I just love that play to kind of open up that space for Cole Perfetti to come flying behind him with attacking both defenders and making them both react. It just opens up so much for everybody else. It's no secret. That's what he does. He goes through the neutral zone with speed, slows right up and makes the D react to him. I thought he was creating really well tonight. He's my 2nd star. And the prick. Cole Perfetti's breakout is upon us. We saw him at full confidence tonight. Hey, Dog's not happy that I've been too long on this stream, but I think it was Choices over on Twitch was talking about, Cole Perfetti was talking after the game in an interview about how the game's starting to feel slower for him, how he's starting to see it slower. And that's the kind of thing you hear from guys as they're really figuring it out. The game slows down for them. And given Cole Perfetti's elite IQ, his ability to create, and now adding that prick element, pissing off a guy like Mika Zibanejad and causing a big scrum, I think the breakout's here. If the game's slowing down for Cole Perfetti, I'm a big believer. He's my number 1 star tonight. We will see you on Friday after a big game against the Dallas Stars. I can't wait to see how that one turns out.
Right on, y'all. You know the drill. Tell two friends to tell two friends. Rate, review, and remember, the landing strip for your Winnipeg Jets postgame.